everyone, it's Miss O'Donnell. So today we're going to talk about slope, but we're going to talk about it more in terms of your project. So we learned our slope formula, which is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, where x1, y1, and x2, y2 are 2 points on your line. So how we're going to do this is we're going to take our project, our shapes that we made for our project, and prove the slopes of all of the sides. So here's an example. If I had this rectangle as one of my shapes, I labeled it A, B, C, and D, and I want to prove that this shape is a rectangle. So in order to be a rectangle, opposite sides have parallel slopes and adjacent sides have perpendicular slopes. So I need to prove that the opposite sides of my rectangle, the slopes, are parallel, and the adjacent sides, the ones next to each other, are perpendicular. So first, let's talk about what it means to be parallel and perpendicular. So if we have parallel lines, their slopes are going to be equal. So for example, if I had a slope of 2/3 and another line with a slope of 2/3, those two lines are going to be parallel. So if you're trying to prove that two sides are parallel, you're trying to prove that their slopes are equal. So you would solve for both of their slopes, see if they're equal. If they are, then the lines are parallel. In order to be perpendicular, slopes have to be opposite reciprocals. So if I had a slope of 4/9, what these words mean, reciprocal means that it's flipped upside down. So 4/9, I would flip it and get 9/4. And then opposite means that you change the sign. So since 4/9 is positive, we want our 9/4 to be negative. So the slopes of 4/9 and negative 9/4 are opposite reciprocals. Therefore, those two lines would be perpendicular. So if you're asked to prove that two sides are perpendicular, you're trying to prove that their slopes are opposite reciprocals. So here's another example of that. If you had a slope of -1/5, the opposite reciprocal, you would flip it upside down and change the sign. So the perpendicular slope to -1/5 would be +5/1 or +5. Something to note is that the opposite reciprocal of 0 is undefined. So this is going to come up a lot, especially if you chose squares or rectangles. You're going to get a lot of slopes that are 0 or undefined. So 0 and 0 would be parallel, undefined and undefined would be parallel, 0 and undefined would be perpendicular. All right, so now I'm going to show you how you would actually go about doing this. So I have my rectangle. I need to prove the slope of every single side. So I need the slope of AB, the slope of BC, the slope of CD, and the slope of DA. And then at the end, I would want to prove that the slopes of AB and CD are equal, the slopes of BC and DA are equal, and the slopes of all the sides next to each other are perpendicular. So AB and BC would be perpendicular, BC and CD would be perpendicular, CD and DA would be perpendicular, and DA and AD would be perpendicular. So that's a lot of things you have to prove, but you can do all of that simply by finding the slopes of these four sides. So I'm going to start with the slope of AB. So point A is at 5/8 and B is at 10/8. So I want to find the slope in between those 2 points. You're going to do that just by finding the slope. So we have our formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to plug in everything. So my A is going to be x1, y1. My B is going to be x2, y2. So I plugged in all my coordinates. So y2 is 8, y1 is 8, x2 is 10, and x1 is 5. So I have 8 minus 8 over 10 minus 5, which is 0/5. And if you remember, 0 divided by a number is 0. So the slope of AB is 0. So now I'm going to find the slope of BC. So BC is at 10/8, or B is at 10/8, C is at 10/12. So I'm going to plug those into my formula. I get 12 minus 8 over 10 minus 10, which is 4 divided by 0. Remember, a number divided by 0 is undefined. So the slope of BC is a vertical line, so it is undefined. So I would do the same thing for CD and DA. I would end up with AB is 0, BC is undefined, CD is 0, and DA is undefined. So now I got to think, did I prove that this is a rectangle? So I proved this shape is a rectangle because opposite sides have parallel slopes. And you can see that because AB and CD are opposite and they have the same slope. BC and DA are opposite and they have undefined slopes. and adjacent sides have perpendicular slopes. So anytime I have two sides next to each other, such as AB and BC, those are perpendicular. Those are opposite reciprocals. So this is what you're going to be doing for your project. You're going to be taking your shapes, you're going to be finding the slopes of every side of your shape, and then you're going to use that information to prove that your shape is what you say it is. So if your shape is supposed to have parallel sides, you're proving that those sides are have the same slope. If they're supposed to be perpendicular, you're proving that those sides have opposite reciprocal slopes. So you're going to be doing that for your project. If you need help, make sure you let me know. If you're confused about anything, just send me an email or join me for office hours. I will check all your work. So if you want to send me an email with all of your work, um, you can do that. So what I want you to do is you're going to be doing this on paper. So you'll or like a whiteboard, whatever you have available. You're going to be writing out all of your notes, taking a picture of it with your phone, and then uploading it, just like we did with our Desmos picture. So if you need help with any of that, I'll make an additional video explaining how to do that, and you can go ahead and watch it. Put that all up on your exit ticket. If you have any questions, please email me. I know this is going to be a lot, but you're doing all the slopes for your shapes that you made the other day.